I'm very excited about this research, and I'm excited. There's 100 things I want to say to you, and I've only got a very short time in which to say it, and I want to engage you in the process of thinking about this, not just sat where you are listening to me, but actually actively thinking about this. But I just do want to tell you a couple of things about why I'm excited about this research. I think that it shows, not just in theory, and the theory, it seems to me, is pretty much common sense. It's what Basil Fawlty would have called the bleeding obvious, that if we work together, we will achieve something we might not otherwise achieve. But what I think the document shows, and I do urge you to spend 20 minutes tomorrow morning having a look at this, and in particular, looking at some of the very, very practical examples, which I think shows that this isn't just about meeting up for lunch a couple of times and maybe putting our names on a document together, but it is about how we structure frameworks that enable us to bring the best out of one another and achieve something that we would not be able to achieve by ourselves. Most of all, I think those examples show what's achieved with different skills and perspectives. I kept thinking as I was reading it of that Mark Twain phrase about the man with the hammer, everything looking like a nail. And I think all of us are a bit guilty of doing that. You know, we sit in very different places, whether it's as the head teacher of a school or it's an organisation like those I've been associated with in the third sector, or whether it's in a business. We bring to any single problem that we see in the wider community, we bring our own particular perspective. We achieve extraordinary things, extraordinary and unexpected things, when we bring together different tools, create an entirely different a toolbox and set of crafts that we bring to a problem and create an entirely different solution that none of us would have come up with before. And the reason why I say I'm excited, and I use that word unashamedly, is because I think the nation needs that kind of thinking at the moment more than ever. In conversations that I've been a part of over the last couple of days, again and again, people talk about what's happening in the economy. You know, we know what that means. We know what that means for the organisations of which we are a part. And those who are in public services or are working in the third sector know particularly that whatever might happen around the country emerging from recession will not have an impact on the communities that we serve, particularly the most disadvantaged communities, for some considerable time after that. So we are looking at a struggle in those communities for some time to come. We know that beyond the economy, there are huge changes, far bigger changes than at any time in our lifetime. Let's take, for instance, just one, which I've heard referred to again a couple of times over the last couple of days. The number of over 60s. Incredibly, over the last couple of years, the number of over 60s in our community, in our country, is now exceeding the number of under 16-year-olds. And that trend will accelerate. It won't change. At the same time, average life expectancy increases at 5 hours a day, every day. We don't need to be government statisticians to work out the implications of that for the health service and for other public services. I think, I'm reminded as I think about these things, what Henry Ford said, that if you just take one of these issues and you ask one group of people, if, for instance, you just ask your customers, what do they need? If he'd just asked his customers what did they need, they would have said, he thought, a faster horse. Doing what we do at the moment, only doing it just a little bit better, isn't going to be good enough to meet those challenges that I've just hinted at already and we hear over and over again. We don't need a faster horse. We need, as he rightly identified, a Model T Ford. So how and where are we going to apply the power of these collaborations most effectively? Well, I think it is not just dealing with the symptoms of an issue, but in identifying and excavating the roots of problems. Generally, I think that we in this country do prevention very badly indeed. 2 more conversations I've been a part of over the last couple of days about the forgotten generation. We've all begun to use that phrase now, the 1.5 million young people not in education, training or employment. We know that about a quarter of our school leavers are leaving school now with literacy levels below that expected of an 11-year-old. They're simply not job ready. We know this movement, BITC and its members, knows better than most how to do reading recovery at a much younger age. Why aren't we doing it more? Why aren't we working earlier, preventing these problems? We know, and we heard again yesterday about the ballooning costs of the NHS, what an unsustainable path that institution is on. We know about the numbers of older people who fall in the bathroom and in the shower. We know the costs of hip replacement, extended stay in hospital, and I learnt yesterday that a rail in the bathroom, a grab rail, costs £38. Why aren't we focusing our attention there? I'm left thinking that we don't just wait for trouble in this country. We issue an invitation and send a car round to collect. And why are we doing that? Because housing grab rails aren't the hospital's responsibility, because literacy isn't what employers do. We need to escape from that kind of thinking, and we need to do it together. We need to do it collaboratively. Different skills, responsibilities, different perspectives, but a common cause. Many in this movement responded quickly, powerfully, very generously to the riots last summer with funds to rebuild some of our communities. A necessary, indeed an essential first step. But are we as individuals, as organisations, as a wider community, are we any closer to understanding why those riots occurred? And are we any closer to preventing the fire next time? The fire that will surely burn this August. I don't think we are. I certainly don't think we are in my own community. Applying our separate skills to that, for instance, that question, unpeeling that problem, and then rooting out the causes, leads to a sustainable solution, the sort that we need now more than ever. Charlotte talked about that as a way of doing business, not an add-on to what we do at the moment, but a way in which we work together, fundamental to each of our organisations. We know, I think, that in theory makes sense. Can we do it in practice? Well, I'd like to try with you a little exercise to explore this together. We're going to put up on the screen a series of scenarios for you. And I would like you to explore together how you might first unpeel the problem. What is the problem we're trying to explore here? And then secondly, where does our business begin in tackling that issue? Where does the problem begin? What is the root cause of that issue? And then how can our business begin the process of addressing that problem? And each one of these issues, I think, the issues are on the table, are they? I'm sorry, they're not going to come up on the screen. The issues are on the table. We'd like you very quickly to just pick one of those scenarios, think together, where does the problem begin? Then how can our business begin the process of thinking about it? I'm then going to just draw you together. You've got about 10 minutes or so to think about this, so very, very brief. And I'm just going to ask a couple of tables to give us a 60-second account of how they would do this process. I'm going to stop you there. It was, of course, an entirely unfair and unreasonable challenge to expect you to answer these questions in 8 minutes or so. And I'm now going to do something even more unfair and unreasonable and ask for just 3 tables to share with us how far they got with that. The good bit is that I only want you to talk for about a minute on what you've actually done. We're going to take 3, and they're going to be 3 different scenarios. I wonder if table 18, looking at the school scenario, would share with us how far they got? I think a microphone is coming towards you.
That's not fair that we're first. Okay, so in case people didn't know, it was our local school is under-resourced and under pressure. Whenever we call them up and ask what they need from us, they're not sure. We would like to help, but we don't know how. So we decided that the main problem here is that the management of the school doesn't really have the business acumen, and they seem to be unclear as to what their goals are and how to organize themselves. And really we thought that this is quite understandable if maybe the management of the school comes from a professional teaching background and they've never been taught management skills. We thought maybe that the management of the school didn't really understand what the problem was in the community. They didn't have the knowledge or even the interest in the wider environment to know what they needed to do to push their business forward. So where did the problem begin? we think that basically it is this lack of business skills and maybe even a lack of the government impetus of training them in management skills and expecting the management of a school to have business acumen that they're not really trained to do. So we felt that the business really has to get in and understand what the problem of the school is. It's not enough to just phone them up and say, what do you need? They've got to mentor this school. They have to go in, sit down, ask them questions, spend a couple of days there and find out what the problems are. It might not necessarily be a problem of money. It might be a pressure. It says that they are under pressure. So it might be just mentoring them and helping them reorganize themselves. Maybe helping them apply for more money. Possibly there's more money available and they just don't know how to apply for it. So it's not necessarily, we thought, a question of just throwing money at them. It was a question of really mentoring them, finding out and communicating with them what their needs were, and then seeing how our business could provide those skills, and if money if necessary, or help them raise the money necessary to overcome this problem.
Thank you very much, and thank you for being so brave as to share that with us right off. Did you have anyone any teachers or anybody from a school on the table? No. I wonder how that would have been framed differently if you had done. But it demonstrates, I think, the power of just thinking through that the presenting problem isn't necessarily the problem that's at the heart of the issue. Let's move on to one of the other scenarios. Table 10, we're looking at local sourcing. Where was table 10? Over there.
Yeah, so the issue we got was our customers tell us that they would like us to source more locally. We have a few on board, but don't know or have the resources to do more. And we could relate this to, we've got a representative from Mighty here on the table who could relate it to her business in that there's some examples of having national contractors who want to rationalise the supply chain, and this is really about sort of fragmenting that supply chain again. That takes quite a lot of effort and resource, and people sitting sort of remotely in head offices don't have the local knowledge, the local know-how, haven't identified the local experts. So there's that's a sort of area to begin. And we also thought that maybe this issue. We didn't maybe nail down what the real problem is, because they're saying they want local sourcing. Maybe there's more issues to this. It might be around employment, it might be around carbon footprint. So really questioning the customers further and to try and get down to the full issue. So I think they were the two things we concluded. And also seeking other organisations who have the same problems in the area. So that's the actions we thought we would take.
That's terrific. Thank you very much. It throws up more questions than answers, as you might expect, in 10 minutes, but just imagine how far you could have got in 2 hours. Let's just take one more. Table 19 about the high street issue. Where is table 19?
Hi there. So the issue we were addressing was 1 in 7 shops in the high streets in which we operate have closed over the last 3 years. This will impact our business and employees. So I guess our sense of the real problem was that the economic viability of the small independent trader was being challenged by a bunch of things. A combination of trends not in their favor, obviously the economic recession, and then changing lifestyles. Frankly, people have less time and the high street stores are being squeezed out by large out-of-town shopping centers that offer a broader range of products, easier accessibility at lower prices. So in terms of the potential to address the problem, I guess one thing is the issue is it's very framed as a very black and white issue, that the close of the high street independent trader is necessarily the death of the high street. I think one thing that the independent shop needs to do is really understand what is their USP. So you may be going to a Tesco or Sainsbury's to buy the vast majority of your products, but maybe there are certain products where you actually want that personalized local feeling and you're willing to invest the time. So it's really understanding what the unique thing that they offer might be. And then secondly, if a big brand is coming into a high street, it's not necessarily the death of a high street so long as that big brand reinterprets their role in the community. So they don't necessarily have to be a faceless corporate that doesn't have any links with the community. I think there's some examples. For example, we heard about what ASDA's doing in terms of, involving the whole community. I know for the company I work for, IHG, we have a global model and run global brands, but our sense of our hotels is it's very much part of the community, and how can you establish those links? So it is a very complex issue. I think the real challenge is that you don't want those shops remaining empty, because that is the death of the high street. So it's what business can do to address that.
Thank you very much. I'm grateful to everybody who participated in the exercise, but also particularly was brave enough to share their learning with us. I just pick out a couple of things from that. I think, first of all, for each group asked more questions than they had answers, which is entirely understandable in 8 or 9 minutes. But I think, beginning to unpeel the onion here and understand that the real issue isn't necessarily the presenting one. What presents are the symptoms. Beneath that are rather deeper issues with deeper roots. And therefore, the solutions are likely to be very, very different and require different things from us. And of course, some of those things we might not be able to do as a voluntary organisation, as a business in a particular patch, as a school. It is by collaborating with one another that we find the fully formed solution together. I'm enthusiastic about how we might take some of these ideas forward. I lead something called the Early Action Task Force. We published this report last autumn called The Triple Dividend, which is about thinking about how we build a society that prevents problems from occurring rather than one that deals with the consequences. We called it Triple Dividend because we think there are 3 returns from this: thriving lives, costing less, contributing more. We think that is the way forward towards some sustainable solutions. This task force is drawn from across the sectors. We're publishing again in May, and we want to drive this agenda forward. And I'm very enthusiastic about how we might work with BITC and other organizations, businesses and organizations in the room, on applying this kind of what's the problem, what's the real problem kind of thinking in collaborations across the UK. And I will travel anywhere over the course of the next few months to support those first collaborations which are really committed to developing that way of thinking. I want to, through the task force and through those partnerships, bring those collaborations together within a year or so to learn from one another, to set the bar high, and to galvanize the nation with this idea of really tackling our problems in collaboration. Not your money and my agency, but in lockstep partnership, each bringing out individual attributes to the collaboration. Just one condition to all that: no more make, do and mend. Yank up the roots. That, I think, is sustainable solutions, and that, I think, should be our common cause. If you're interested in playing a part in that, do please get in touch. I think we can make a difference through this approach. We can lead a difference.
David, thank you so much.